Hey there, my name is Chris Calabro. I'm the founder of Enotium, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to make a custom Mautic email theme. Now, this does not require any coding experience because we'll be using a drag and drop builder, Stripo, which I'll be showing you in a moment, to create our email layout and design. We will be adding little snippets of code to the email once we're done building it to make it editable for Mautic, and I'll show you exactly what those snippets are and where to add them. And then lastly, I'll show you how to package it up as a theme file so you can install it in any Mautic instance. Keep in mind, this is really only one way to build Mautic email themes. And as of the recording of this video, there's actually a new email builder for Mautic in the works, which is going to make themes much less of a hassle to create. But for now, this is a quick and dirty, easy way to get started with themes. With that, what we're going to do is start with a free Stripo account. So stripo.email, create a free account. I've already done that, and I'm logged in here. For the purposes of this video, a free account is going to work totally fine. There are a few limitations in terms of the number of templates you can build, but if you find that this video is helpful and you want to create a bunch more emails and themes, you'll want to upgrade and you'll find it's definitely worth the price. Another caveat here before we really dive in, this isn't a video on how to use Stripo itself. We're just going to be using it to build our email because it generates really good email code and it's code that happens to render really nicely. So if you're used to having issues with Outlook or other email clients where you hire someone to build something or you try and hack it together yourself and it just doesn't look good in all your clients, in all your email clients that you're testing in, this will solve most of those issues. Stripo is really good. They update things a lot. And while there will be some limitations in terms of what can be done and what can be edited in Mautic, this really covers, I think, most people's needs. So let's start with our email template. And for the purposes of this video, again, we're going to start with an empty template, but I wanted to briefly show you two templates that are very helpful. One is the training template. This really explains, if we open the preview here, this gives you a nice high-level overview of the different components, the different aspects of the builder, ways you can use them, and it actually gets into some of the more advanced features, including smart modules, and I don't think this one has any AMP components, but if you're not familiar with AMP for email, this is a new way to add interactivity to your emails, and Stripo offers that as well. We're not going to cover that in this video. Let's create our basic template to start with, and we'll create an empty template. And like I said, this isn't a course on how to use Stripo, but I do want to cover the basics really quick. So from the builder screen here, we have two tabs. We have appearance and content. The appearance tab allows you to set settings that are a more high level that apply to the email as a whole. So we have the width of the email, default padding, the background color. Again, this applies to the whole email. You can choose a font. They do include some Google fonts here by default, and you can actually bring in your own custom fonts. You can check their documentation on how to do that. Some other settings here. These are the stripes settings. In Stripo, a stripe is basically a full width section like we're looking at here. So you will have many of these in your email. As we're building it, I'll demonstrate that in a moment. But in the stripe section, you can basically control the default settings for each of these types of sections. So you can have a content stripe, which is mostly what we'll be working with, or a header stripe. Just gives you a way to set defaults. And then you have headings. So you can, again, choose a default font, line spacing, and font sizes and colors for all of your headings. You have some options with your buttons here and how you want those to display. And then some basic options that you can tweak on mobile. Do you want to shrink your header text? Do you want to adjust the size of your headings? Are your buttons going to go full width? Are you going to have a margin around your email? Lots of really good stuff to dig into here if you want to take the time and really get to know this builder. I really love it. But let's move on to the second tab here, because we're going to be spending most of our time here. Here we have the content. So the content of our theme is really going to be split into two main sections. First is stripes, and these are going to be the equivalent of sections in Mautic's builder. And then we're going to have structures, and within those structures we have containers, which are basically columns, like you see here in the blue drop content here areas. So let's go over a couple notes about background colors before we start putting in our actual content. The stripe background color. So if you click out here, you can click into a stripe. You can move them around. Your stripe background color right here. This unfortunately will not be editable in Mautic. So you'll have your email wide background that was set under the appearance general settings. But if you want to have one of your sections, one of your stripes have a different background color, like if for some reason you want to have a black background color up here at the top, this will not be editable in Mautic, just a heads up. So the content, background color of content here, however, is editable in Mautic. So you can change this to whatever you want. You can have different colored backgrounds within the different sections of your email. In this case, I'm just going to be working with white background for the most part. So we'll set that back. And then one final note about background images here. So you can add background images. So you can add a background image on the stripe. So this will be a full width background image. You can also set background images on the structure. So it'll just be contained within the fixed width of the email. Right now, neither of these will render in Outlook. They work in pretty much every other client, but not Outlook. So if you're going to use them, keep that in mind. And they also will not be editable in Mautic. So what I usually recommend is if you're going to have a different colored background, for example, if you want to have one that's all gray and one that's all dark, you can make two separate themes, or you can have a duplicate version of this stripe, one that has a dark background color and one that has your standard background color, and then you can just delete the one that you don't need. Next, we'll take a look at structures, and these are really where you start actually building your email. So when you are adding structures, you'll see here, if we head back, you can add a whole range of structures from just one column all the way up to, I think you can even do 8 columns. So if you come into your structure here, you can just click the plus button and keep adding columns and adjust their widths right here. And one word of caution with the structures is that I would highly recommend not setting a background color here. For example, if you want this to be red background color, rather than setting it on the structure level, you want to set that, and we can just delete that to make it transparent. You want to set that on the stripe level. So if you want that to be red, come in here and set it on the stripe, not on the structure. Let's set that back. All right, so we have our stripes and we have our structures and we have our columns. Now let's actually add some content here. So if you open up the blocks panel here, you'll have all your basic building blocks that you would use, including some advanced AMP for email blocks here that we're not going to get into beyond the scope of this essentials type of video. So we can drag in an image, and then you have the option to drag and drop images from your computer, or you can grab stock photos from Unsplash. I'm going to grab something here and put in my logo. So you see it comes in pretty nicely, and you can then adjust the width, adjust the alignment. You can choose if it's responsive. So for example, if we preview this in here in Stripo, you can see it's smaller on desktop, and then on mobile it goes full width. It becomes responsive. So if you don't want that for your logo, maybe you don't want a giant logo at the top of your email, you can just turn that off. And when you go and preview your message, you'll see it stays the same size on both desktop and mobile. So that's how you can add basic content blocks. So we can add in a text block here. You get the point. The other way to add content is to use modules. And these are kind of a way to get a quick start on your layout. They are basically pre-built structures that you can just drop right in. So for example, we can drag this in under our logo, and there we have a new structure. The cool thing about this is you can also save your own modules. So if you hover over any of these sections or structures, you can save as module, and then you'll have your own modules here in Stripo under My Modules, which I don't have any saved yet. So let's go ahead and actually build out this email, and then we'll finish making it editable. So you'll notice here when I drag in a new module that it might come in under this stripe. In this case, I actually want it to be separate so that I can move these stripes around, because right now these are in the same section. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new stripe for every section of my email, and then we can just move this into our newly created stripe. So now we have one stripe for our header, one stripe for this, and let's remove that. And it looks like this button has a little bit of green outline that I'm going to get rid of here. Yeah, turn off that border. And then let's just grab a footer module. Let's see if we can search for footer. Here we go. We'll just drag in. Again, you see this is wanting to put it in that stripe there. So what we could do is actually create new stripe and then go back to our modules and search for footer. And we'll just drag in this basic footer. All right, so not the most beautiful email in the world, but it will work for our example here. So we now have 3 stripes. We have 3 content stripes. And the next and most important step is making this email editable for Mautic. Because at this point, we could hit the export button and we could generate an HTML email. And then we could take that code, we could copy and paste it into a code mode email in Mautic. And my guess is you have experience with this before using BeFree or MailChimp or some other email builder. And that's certainly doable, but we're here to learn how to build an actual email theme that won't have to be copy and pasted into code mode. So to do that, we're going to have to get our hands just a little bit dirty in the code. From our dashboard here, from our builder, make sure we are not selecting any component of the email. Make sure we're clicked outside of the email and click the code editor right here. And if you're not used to looking at code, this might be a little intimidating at first, but what I'm going to point out to you is what we are creating here first is our email sections. So as I mentioned before, our stripes are going to be our sections in Mautic. So let's pop over into Mautic real quick. And if we create a brand new email, and this will be very familiar to most of you, I'm sure, you'll see you have text areas that you can edit content, but you also have sections. So this area highlighted in yellow is a section, right? And you can duplicate this and you can move it around and you can delete. And this is super important for our theme. We don't want to have a theme that's just static where we can't move anything around, right? So back in our Stripo email, we are going to be looking for the tables that are the second level down. So after the head, we're closing, we look for here, we see the closing head tag, then we have the opening body tag, and then we have our first table, which has the class ES wrapper. Our second table should have a class ES content or ES header, something like that. It's going to be the one that comes right after ES email paddings. We should have one of these for each stripe in our email. So we have 3 stripes in our email, so we should have 3 of these. So if we scroll down, there's 1, 2, and 3. And then that's it. So what we're going to do is we're going to close up by hitting the little triangle on the left side here to make it a little more obvious what we're working with. So here are our 3 stripes, our 3 sections of our email. And what we're going to do with these is we're going to wrap each of these in a div tag. So we're going to say div data section wrapper equals 1. And then we're going to close that div around our table. So this right here, and I'll just add some spaces. You don't need to add these spaces just for clarity. This is a section. What we've just done here is made this email the equivalent, made that section the equivalent of a section like this. We've made it editable. So we're going to do that for each of the other 2 sections in our email. And again, you need to do this for every section that you build in Stripo. Okay, so there's our 3 sections. Now what we're going to do is click into each of our stripes individually. And this is going to allow us to put in the next section of our code. So we're now clicked into our first stripe, and we can see, because at the top it says class ESD stripe. And in the first table, right underneath that, we have to add another bit of code, data section equals 1. All right, so we're going to add this in the first table in each stripe. So we'll open up our next stripe, paste that in, and open up our third stripe, and again, paste in data section equals 1. Okay, so we have our sections. Next, we need to add our data slots. Our slots are really these different slot types, but luckily we don't really need to use all of these different slots. As you can see in this email, and this is a theme built by Mautic themselves, this slot type text can really be used for pretty much all of your content. So that's exactly what we're going to do in our email. So again, I'm going to start at the top. We're going to go through each of our sections, each of our stripes, and look for ESD container frame. If you can't find it, you can always do a search, Command F or Control F, ESD container frame, and there it is. And in this TD, in this table cell, we're going to add data slot container equals 1. And then right under here, you'll see we have another table. So we can close up that table, and then we're going to do something similar to what we did with our stripes, with our sections. And we're going to surround this table with a div. And we're going to say data slot equals text. And then don't forget to close your div tag around that table. So data slot equals text around your table, and that's the table that is nested directly under ESD container frame. So just for clarification, let's run through the other 2. So here's our ESD container frame. So we're going to say data slot container equals 1. And then I like to close this up just so I don't have to get confused by all the other code in there. Again, we're going to wrap that table with data slot equals text. And one more here. Here's our ESD container frame, data slot container. And then here's the table that we need to wrap in a div. All right, so those are the most critical aspects of making your email editable. You really need to review this section, make sure you get this code right. I'll put a copy of this, these code snippets in the description below this video, so you can copy and paste those. There are certainly other ways to put in these code snippets. If you're using another email builder, you're welcome to test that out and experiment. But putting these snippets in exactly these spots works with Stripo. And that's a really great way to get started with email themes, in my opinion. Okay, so let's close the code editor. There are two more little things that we want to add here. And again, these aren't essential to do here because you could certainly do them in the Mautic builder. But one that I recommend doing is setting your subject line. So here, we're not actually going to put in the subject line of our message because this is going to be an email theme that we're going to reuse over and over. So to have your subject line be dynamically populated here, and this is just going to show up in the title tag if anyone opens the email. You can use a curly brace and then just type subject. And then we can close this settings. Before I close, one thing to note here is Stripo does offer the ability to add hidden pre-header text. And like I was just saying with the subject line, you wouldn't necessarily want to put in hidden pre-header text here if you're going to be reusing this as a theme, reusing it as the base for multiple emails. There is a way to add hidden pre-header text code to your email, but I'll cover that in a separate video. So we've added our subject wrapped in curly braces, and we can close those settings panels. And the last thing I'd recommend doing is, in this case, because this is a default footer, I'm gonna clean up some of this and just say, I don't really want this home and forward links, but I do want the unsubscribe link. So we can click this and make it a link. Whoops, looks like it was already a link. Let's make it a link once more. Okay, so to add our Mautic link, our Mautic unsubscribe link, we're going to choose the link and choose other as the protocol type. And then we're going to put in the unsubscribe URL as our token. All right, so our email is now ready for export. And then once we export, we'll be able to actually put it into a theme and test it out. So to export, you're going to hit this big green export button up at the top. And you'll notice here, you'll have a message if you're on the free plan. You've made one export from your 4 available. So this is one of the limitations you get with Stripo on the free plan, is you can only export 4 emails per month, which if you're gonna be building a lot of themes, this might be a limitation for you. The other way to approach building themes is to treat this as a master theme. So rather than build, one email for your transactional messages, or one theme for your transactional messages, and one theme for your welcome series, and another for your promotional series, you could create a single master email with all the sections that you might need. And then you'll be able to just delete and copy and modify those sections within Mautic. So that's one way if you want to get around the export and you don't really want to work in Stripo. Build a master theme once and then export it. But in this case, we just have a small email and we're going to export as HTML and download the HTML file. All right, so that should be in my downloads folder here. So we have our HTML file and we can preview this, and looks good. Basic, but it looks good. At this point, we can't really do much with this until we put it into a theme. You could copy and paste it into code mode, but then you're dealing with just another HTML email. So to create our theme file, what I'm going to recommend is that you actually start from an existing theme. So from your Mautic dashboard, go over to Settings, Themes, and you should have a full list of themes here. And we're going to export, or download rather, the blank theme as our starting point. So if we open up this theme, we'll take a look at the basic theme structure. This is a very bare bones theme. We have a config file, then we have our twig files in the HTML folder, and lastly, we have a thumbnail. So let's start by replacing this email.html.twig file with our own email file, with our own HTML email file. So I'm going to delete this email.html.twig file, rename mine email.html.twig, and we'll drag that into our HTML folder. The other thing that I'm going to do is, because this is only an email theme, if you see over here in Mautic, you can actually have a theme that has a page component and a form component to it. But in this case, we're not doing that. So I'm going to remove the form and page files here. The other two we do need to keep. And then the other thing we're going to do is modify the config file to put our info in here. So this is where you can put your theme name, the author, your website page, and then also list the features that your theme has. So in this case, we'll just say this is Enotium test. Author is Enotium, enotium.com. And I'm going to remove the page and form features. So it'll be clear from our themes area in Mautic that this is an email only theme. And then make sure that's saved, and we'll quit. The last thing, and this is totally optional, is to replace your thumbnail. I am going to go back to Stripo, and using their preview button here, I can actually take a look at my email in a new tab. And you can use a Chrome extension or a browser extension, or you can just use the built-in screenshot functionality and take a screenshot of your theme, of your email rather. And then if we head back to desktop, we should have our screenshot. I'll move that to my downloads folder and rename it thumbnail.png. This is important, otherwise Mautic won't recognize your thumbnail, and then we'll put it into our blank theme folder, and yes, we want to replace it. So we have our config file, we have our HTML twig file, and we have our thumbnail. And the last thing we need to do here is zip this back up and create a zip file that we can use to actually install in Mautic. And this is a mistake that I see all the time when people are trying to create themes. You're not going to compress or zip the folder itself. You're actually going to select the theme files and then turn those into a zip file. So we'll say Enotium test. All right, and let's go back to our themes area and try out our new theme. Choose the file, click install. You can see the theme Enotium test has been installed. It should also appear in our list of themes. You can see my other test here. Here's the one we just created. And if we delete this one, just so there's no confusion when we're going to create our new email, let's go over to the email section. create a new message. And if you scroll down, you should see your new email theme ready to go. I'll select that, open up the builder, and let's make sure everything works. So we should have 3 sections. So here's 1, 2, 3. This looks great. We can duplicate these. We can remove them. We can move them around. And it looks like everything is editable. So there's a text slot. So here's my logo. I can replace that logo. I can resize it if I want. Here's my text area for the main body of the email. Everything looks editable here. And then the last section, it looks like we must have forgotten to add text editing capabilities to this footer code. So this is going to happen when you build these things, right? I made a mistake. I forgot to add code here. So let's go take a look at our code and see if we can fix it. So back in Stripo, we're going to take a look at this stripe and open up our code editor. So if you remember, what we needed to add was the data slot container in the ESD container frame. And I can see right here that I have a typo. It says data with a DATQ. So let's change that to data slot container. And that should fix the problem. So let's do that. Export our file one more time. And if we go back to our downloads folder, we should have a new template. There we go. So I'm going to rename that email.html.twig. And then we'll drag this in. Again, replacing the old file. And let's delete our first version and select our files once again. Zip those up. And we'll say test2. And if we close the builder and go back to our themes area, we can upload that new updated theme. Click install. There we go. There's test2. I'm going to delete the old one. And let's go back and try and create a new email and see if everything is editable. First section, second section, third, and there we go. Everything is now accessible in the Mautic builder.